Hi Claire, hi Gemma. I thought I'd record a quick screencast to give you an update on my progress in updating the slides in response to the feedback that I'd had. So these early slides haven't really changed much. I made a couple of tweaks to the timings, giving a little bit more time to this section here. But otherwise I think the timings are more or less the same. I've just put in a little introductory slide there, why a phonic-based approach has been highlighted at this time, which prompts us then to talk a little bit about the wider functional skills reform programme. That slide hasn't changed. Then there's opportunity for us to discuss or give a quick summary of the excellent report that you did, Gemma. And what I did have 5 separate slides for each of the 5 recommendations, but then I thought it might take a while to get through all of those, so I put them all onto one slide. And I've put some additional information in the notes section for this slide, and I've tried to bring out some of the key points, some of the key recommendations in the report about looking at how phonics links into other pedagogical approaches, the importance of trying to find a pace and sequence that works with adults, the focus on developing teacher expertise rather than just developing a scheme, assessment processes, and preempting people's concerns about the particular challenges of using phonics in the post-16 sector. I know that we are going to have a section when we prompt them to share some of their concerns, but I thought it's useful even at this stage to indicate that we are already aware of the dilemmas that face us. Then there's the searchlights model. Again, I thought it would be kind of useful to show that we're not just doing this work on phonics because the government tells us to, but I just want to give people a very, very quick glimpse of the rationale for looking at phonics. And I think for me it begins with the critique of the searchlights model, and I think that's still, if anyone's got any kind of model of reading development, I think this is the one that they probably still have. It's the one that was used in the original Skills for Life strategy in the training sessions, and I thought I've inserted a slide here that mentions some of the key points about the critique of the searchlights model, which leads us into a discussion of why phonics is now, the last 10, 20, 30 years, has been looked at and has been understood as to be a much more crucial element of learning to read. So these are some of the key points I thought might be worth putting there, that it reflects the way confident readers read, but doesn't necessarily explain how novice readers learn to read. Tends to suggest each of the searchlights is of equal value. Phonics, the phonics searchlight used to be overlooked a little bit by adult literacy teachers, who tend by instinct to go for kind of context and whole word recognition. And I think the general point of these 2 or 3 slides is just basically to say, actually phonics, the decoding process, is now much more fully understood and is seen as a key element in the process of learning to read. That's not to say it's all that's involved, and even within the school sector there comes a stage when phonics is integrated with other strategies in terms of word attack skills, but I just think it's useful to indicate to the webinar participants that there has been a lot of work by cognitive psychologists into reading that indicates how important phonic decoding skills are. I thought it would be useful. Now, either we put this stuff into the slides, or, as I mentioned to you last week, Jem, I wondered whether we have a kind of a simple handout that people could have a look at afterwards. But I was going to talk a little bit about, well, after the searchlight model, what comes after that? Well, actually, the simple view of reading, talking a little bit about the two dimensions of spoken language, having a kind of primacy there that people, children and adults, need to be confident in understanding spoken language, and it's that growing combination of word recognition skills and an understanding of language that results in learners being able to make that journey towards confident and fluent reading. So that may or may not be too much to try and put across in these early slides, but and then on top of that, I thought it would be really great to make a link to the research article that you very kindly sent me, Gemma, which I think is fascinating and highlights these 4 areas in terms of the way the simple view of reading was used as a basis for some research with struggling adult readers. And it looks at those 4 factors. Gemma, as you say, the oral vocabulary was the least significant factor, but background knowledge is a really fascinating one for us to explore. And obviously there's the emphasis on decoding skills that's in that bit of research. So I thought that would be really interesting to share with people on the project at some stage, because that could form a basis for some research that they could undertake in looking at the importance of background knowledge, activating prior learning, and there's loads of stuff that's very accessible that we could recommend that people could have a read through, because it does link up with some fundamental good practice in adult literacy support. And then that move, I haven't made many changes to these other slides until we get to this slide that introduces the discussion activity around the decodability of that little selection of vocabulary. So I've changed the focus of the activity in terms of the instructions and left it more as an open discussion activity, really, for us to use to explore the different criteria that people will be using to assess the readability or the decodability of those words. I don't think there's many other changes to the rest of it. So anyway, there's still some stuff that needs to be changed towards those final slides, but I thought it would be useful at this stage just to share some of my early thoughts on the slides. As I said earlier, I'm not sure whether the slides to do with the searchlight model and the critique and the simple view of reading, I'm absolutely fascinated by it, and I think it would be great through the project to get people thinking about the developments in cognitive psychology that have really shaped a bit of shaped the way many of us are thinking now about how children and adults learn to read. But the extent to which we can put that amount of insight into research into the webinar, I'm not sure. It could be that we have just 2 sides of A4 that summarises some of these key findings. But anyway, I thought I'd just share that with you for what it's worth. So I'll obviously send you a link to this video, but obviously I've just recorded this video just for your eyes only and your ears only. But I thought that would be the quickest way to share some of my thoughts and qualifications about the new slides that I've put in there. Hope that's been useful.